Good morning. How's the sound there? Okay, thank you. Well, good morning. Beautiful day today, and welcome. My name is David Kim. I use he, him pronouns. I am honored to welcome you to Hart House as we gather to commemorate Orange Shirt Day and the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. I have the privilege of being the warden of Hart House, and I'm so pleased to see so many here today at this event taking part in these conversations and the wearing of an orange shirt or other element in recognition of this day. So if you take a look at the slides and take a moment to review today's agenda, thank you, and the available supports, which include resources for reflection and discussion, as well as well-being services that are accessible to all participants. One small note, we have an accessible washroom just across the hall here from the Great Hall. We are having an issue with the door. However, we do have a volunteer there by the washroom if needed. So just wanted to note that small piece. Now, I would like to introduce J. Daniel Baganan, Vice President of Student Life, Faculty of Music Undergraduate Association, and Student Classical Voice Performance. We were just chatting about Jay and a performance in opera, very impressive. Part of the Faculty of Music, who will be offering a land acknowledgement. Jay.
Hello. So yes, my name is Jay, and I'm a student at the Faculty of Music here. From U of T's own statement, we wish to acknowledge that this land on which the University of Toronto operates, for thousands of years it has been the traditional land of the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, and the Mississaugas of the Credit. Today, this meeting place is still home to many Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land. This is the official land acknowledgement from U of T. Going further, I'd like to mention that this land is covered by Treaties 13, 13A, the Williams Treaties, and the Dish with One Spoon. Today is a day of mourning. For those who may not have known, watching the live stream, residential schools created by the Canadian government with the church stole Indigenous children from their homes and cultures, abusing them into assimilating into a Euro-Canadian culture. As a settler on this land, it is an injustice to stay silent on the ongoing genocide of Indigenous cultures and peoples. Since August 29th alone, 9 First Nations people have died in contact with the RCMP, or municipal forces in Canada. It is easy to do your own research, to grow and learn and listen, and as students, we are more than capable of educating ourselves. Yet I'm thinking of the Yellowhead Institute's Venn diagram, which draws that there is no action overlapping between easy and transformative. The action that needs to be taken cannot be done alone, but land back and shared power are far more impactful than an orange donut from Tim Hortons. To think an apology is enough is a settler fantasy. Land acknowledgements are a call to action. And in the time I have, I invite everyone to know the truth about Canada's history and not make light of the ongoing colonial projects that continue to occur. We are a highly ranked university. Others look towards us to set an example. The work done by the Indigenous leaders here, students who protest, and the faculty are immense, but we must all continue to hold our institution accountable. There are 94 calls to action from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. U of T has 34 of their own published. Reconciliation cannot be an afterthought. Myself and many others look forward to seeing the university deliver on its calls to action as we all continue with individual actions to stay informed, foster justice and kindness, and collaborate on this land. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay, for such a thoughtful land acknowledgement. This year marks another step in our ongoing journey of reflection and commitment to reconciliation. It was in this very building that on January 13, 2017, Elder Andrew Wesley presented the final report of the U of T Steering Committee's response to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada to President Merrick Gertler and Vice President and Provost Cheryl Reguer. On stage with us today is the Eagle Feather, presented to the Office of the President by elders at the entrustment ceremony. For the report, Wichi Hatawan, it's a symbol of the university's commitment towards reconciliation with Indigenous communities. I am also pleased to share that we recently opened up a new Talking Walls exhibition entitled Working Together Toward Truth and Reconciliation. This exhibition marks the 75th anniversary of the Hart House farm and documents the work undertaken in a collaborative Master of Landscape Architecture course in fall 2023, led by Professor Liet Margolis. The intent of this work is to deepen our collective understanding of settler, colonial, Indigenous relations, policies, and narratives, past, present, nationwide, and territory-specific, and generate a series of future pathways for the interweaving of Indigenous-led land protection, ecological biodiversity, and cultural resurgence. I invite you to take a few moments following the ceremony to walk the hallways of this floor to view this exhibit. Now, Hart House hosts today's important commemoration with members from all three campuses, united in purpose and in recognition of this very important day. Last week, the university celebrated the launch of Zibing, which is located just outside this building at Hart House Garden. It provides a dedicated place for Indigenous students, staff, faculty members, and librarians to gather, teach, and learn, as well as to host ceremonies and celebrations. It is so special to see these steps being taken as we continue to honor our commitment to reconciliation. I'd like to acknowledge that you will see a number of non-Indigenous individuals contributing to today's event alongside our Indigenous colleagues. This reflects a deliberate decision by our planning committee to share the responsibilities of this day, ensuring that the work of educating, reflecting, and engaging with reconciliation does not rest solely on Indigenous peoples. I'd also like to do a shout out, I don't know if MJ is here, to MJ Singleton. I did see her yesterday, this weekend at the UTM powwow, an amazing U of T undergraduate student who's the artist behind this design, so I just wanted to acknowledge that on the shirt. So MJ, thank you. And I would like to now introduce Professor Merrick Gertler, President of the University of Toronto, to share some remarks in reflection of this day. Professor.
Thank you so much, David. Good morning, everyone. I'm very, very pleased to join you as the University of Toronto commemorates the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. This is such an important day in the life of our community and indeed our country. Residential school survivors, their families, and communities continue to suffer from their deeply traumatic experiences. It's an intergenerational trauma as well as an individual one for all of those affected, and one that is deeply felt by many members of this community. And in so many ways, Canadians have only just begun to take responsibility for it. Doing so requires an unflagging commitment to the calls to action set out in the final report of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. For its part, the University of Toronto community remains committed to advancing reconciliation across our three campuses, and we are equally committed to working collaboratively with Indigenous members of the U of T community and the host First Nations as we do so. guided by the priorities laid out by U of T's own Truth and Reconciliation Steering Committee, which has already been referred to by previous speakers. We have made important progress in many areas, including expanding the presence of Indigenous students, staff, faculty, and librarians on our campuses, incorporating Indigenous content into our curricula, supporting Indigenous research programs, and creating physical spaces on our 3 campuses to acknowledge and to honor Indigenous peoples' traditions and histories. And as David just mentioned, just last week we did have a wonderful day celebrating the opening of Zibing in Hart House Circle, which is such a wonderful new place and an old place for Indigenous members of our community to gather and to learn and to teach. So that certainly was a major, major milestone. In June, we introduced a new feature into our convocation ceremonies, a beautiful stole beaded by Indigenous artist Katie Longboat. The stole is to be worn by the eagle feather bearer who leads the Chancellor's procession into each convocation ceremony and who is themselves an important symbol of the university's enduring partnership with Indigenous peoples. To overcome some of the barriers to accessing higher education, the university now covers the cost of tuition for students from 9 First Nations communities whose territories include or are adjacent to the land on which U of T is situated. I'm also delighted to note that earlier this year, our Office of Indigenous Initiatives, I'm delighted to see Shannon Simpson here, reached an impressive milestone providing Indigenous cultural competency training to more than 10,000 students, staff, faculty, and librarians across the university. So congratulations and thank you for the essential work that you undertake. Of course, the process of reconciliation is ongoing. There continues to be so much more work to do. The few changes that I've just mentioned are part of the university's larger effort to be more inclusive of Indigenous members of our community and to build enduring relationships with neighboring Indigenous communities. On that note, I recently had the pleasure of hosting a wonderful and very productive meeting with the new chief of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, Ogimakwe Claire Salt. Among other topics, we discussed how more young members of her nation could be encouraged to attend U of T. And also we talked about how the university could work with her community to tackle a range of urgent challenges, including housing and sanitation, harnessing the incredible energy and intellectual depth and resources of this amazing institution. This kind of collaboration not only provides support to our Indigenous neighbors, but also strengthens the university's ability to fulfill our mission of teaching, research, and innovation. In that spirit, I hope that our gathering today is a source of inspiration, encouragement, and momentum for all of us. May it herald a brighter future for the Indigenous members of our community, for the university as a whole, for Indigenous peoples more broadly, and indeed for Canada. Thank you.
Thank you, President Gertler, for joining us today and for sharing those words. Our next speaker is the Acting Vice President, University of Toronto, and the Acting Principal, University of Toronto Scarborough, Professor Bill Goff. He previously served as the Vice Principal Academic and Dean at UTSC for 8 years. Professor.
Thank you, David. It's always a hard act to follow, Merrick, but I sympathize with others that had to go through this. I'm here representing Vice President and Principal Professor Linda Johnston, who completes a short 3-month leave at midnight tonight. So I'm thrilled to be here as This is the last act of my acting role, and I couldn't be more pleased that it's this setting and this topic. My time as dean at UTSC began at the same time as the release of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission report that we've already heard about today in 2015. This document has transformed the settler response to Indigenous mistreatment and abuse. I come from a family with an almost 500-year settler history, with the arrival of my forebearers in 1639. So I was thinking earlier today, this is personal, but this should be personal for every settler, regardless of how long or what pathway you came to this country. The TRC report is the vehicle to rewrite this history, first by exposing the truth, providing a clear record of settler abuse, in particular, the abuses of the residential school system, and a path forward to create an inclusive, supportive society. This is not the work of one moment or a flurry of well-intentioned initiatives, even though these may be a starting point. It will be done over time as we confront the underpinnings of our colonial history and how this feeds into the structures of privilege. This will be done with sustained effort over many years and generations. Events such as today's and the reading of the land acknowledgement are important steps, but not ends in themselves. They serve to keep the forward momentum of reform up front in our thinking, lest we slide back into old familiar modes of thinking and behaving. While our reach typically exceeds our grasp, and there's much work still to be done, there have been important steps forward on all three campuses of the university, as Merrick mentioned, including the wonderful powwow at UTM this past weekend, the new Indigenous garden outside of this Hart House, and the hiring of many Indigenous identifying faculty on all three campuses. And these are just to name a few. At my campus, we are in the process of building the Indigenous house that will be completed sometime next year, and it is spectacular. I invite you all to that opening next year. And it will serve as a focal point of our TRC response. This response begins with inclusion, and it matures into belonging. We are working through curricular reform as a result of a working circle deliberation that occurred during my time as dean. This past week, I had the pleasure of visiting the University of British Columbia, Okanagan, and met with their leader of Indigenous Initiatives. I caught a glimpse of where we are heading. Through a variety of supportive initiatives and programs, 8% of their student body identify as Indigenous, higher than the local population percentage. A community has formed, and a sense of belonging has been fostered for these students. This gave me hope that we can do something similar here, and I think we're on our way. I'm so pleased with the tuition program that Merrick mentioned that began last year for Indigenous students from a number of local First Nations. In particular, I am pleased with the inclusion of 5 First Nations I grew up near in Eastern Ontario: Tayinda Mohawk Nation, and Alderville, Curve Lake, Hiawatha, and Scugog Island, all nations of the Mississauga. As I leave administrative work in 14 hours, I have agency to choose the issues that I will continue to contribute to. Joining others in the constructive response to TRC will remain as one of my top priorities. So I want to thank all here. It's just wonderful to see this sea of orange. And for your commitment to this day, more generally to the TRC framework, and supporting the inevitable transformation of the University of Toronto. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Goff. We look forward to celebrating the opening of Indigenous House at UTSC next year. Our next speaker today is from the University of Toronto, Mississauga. Benji Jacob is a fourth-year psychology student and is the founder of Studio X, a collaborative art club at UTM, and has worked to transform spaces on campus. Love that. Empowering Indigenous student artists to display their artwork in the UTM Grand Hall's staircases. Benji.
Miigwech, David, for the kind introduction. It's an honor to be here today. As I reflect on the historical and ongoing harms enduring Indigenous peoples across Turtle Island, I'm reminded that reconciliation is a continuous process of learning, unlearning, and growth. It urges us to confront uncomfortable truths and recognize the realities that still impact Indigenous communities globally. At the heart of this journey is the power of storytelling, which not only helps us understand the past, but also opens spaces for hope and healing. Our keynote speaker this morning is Dr. Shirley Chichu, a remarkable artist who embodies the transformative power of storytelling and community. Shirley, a Cree woman born in East Main, Quebec, on the shores of James Bay, has dedicated over 30 years uplifting Indigenous voices through the arts. As the founder and artistic director of the Wingush Film Institute, Shirley is an accomplished and award-winning artist, actor, and filmmaker. She made history as the first First Nation person to write, produce, direct, and act in a feature-length film in Canada, with her work, Bear Walker, having a market screening at the Cannes Film Festival. Her acclaimed Silent Tears premiered at the Sundance Film Festival and won awards for its poignant storytelling. Shirley's creative work extends beyond film. As a visual artist, her paintings have been exhibited worldwide, with commissions from organizations like UNICEF, Amnesty International, and the Ontario Native Women's Association. In addition to her individual achievements, Shirley has made a lasting impact through her leadership. She founded the Debaja Mujik Theatre Group in 1984, which has become one of the foremost Indigenous theatre companies in the world. And her work with the Wingush Film Institute continues to empower Indigenous youth, offering them a platform to cultivate their talents and tell their own stories. Her contributions have earned her the prestigious appointment at the Order of Canada. Dr. Chichu's work is a testament to the power of creativity, storytelling, and cultural preservation. And it's an honor to introduce her today as our keynote speaker. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Shirley Chichu to the stage. Thank you.
If your cell phones ring during my speech, it's okay. I'm not taking up your space. I want to first acknowledge the traditional territories of the many nations that I am standing on. I am honored that you asked me to speak today. I stand here before you as a Cree woman from James Bay, Cree Nation. And I never dreamt that one day I would be a chancellor at a university. As an Aboriginal woman, this is something that never crossed my mind. And here I am, and I thank Brock University for this great opportunity. I am currently the executive and artistic director of Wingush Film Institute on Manitoulin Island. I have been studying alternative education for young Aboriginal people most of my life. What I created at Wingash is a program that works and is very successful. As an Aboriginal woman, I cannot stand aside and watch young people's lives continue to fall through the cracks. My life was not easy. I have struggled and overcome many obstacles, and every day I forge ahead to accomplish one more day of hard work, doing something for the youth so that their dreams can come true and their voices heard across this country. There are a couple of visions that keeps me going every day. I think of a baby at Wounded Knee that was thrown up in the air and shot. I think of the old man that's frozen stiff in the snow. That's what keeps me alive every day to continue doing what I do. When I was very young, I was taken away from my parents, taken from my community, where the Cree language was free, flowing in the air that gave us life. The animals came to us, and we ate healthy food, and everyone trusted each other. The children ran the fields without the fear of being lost or taken by a stranger. Education in our community was the land, the elders, and parents. The whole community was our teachers. Everyone was responsible for teaching the children and young people how to live a respectful and valuable life. Then one day, I witnessed my siblings, my friends, my cousins, children being scooped up, feet no longer touching the fields they ran on, piled into wagons. I knew one day my day was coming, and was coming soon. I ran to my Gukum's house, and I held her, and I didn't want her to let me go. I will be using some quotes from my play, Path with No Moccasins. The days of summer must never end, but they always do. The lines of boats docking in Moosonee with all the children sad and mothers crying, wailing over the sound of the train whistle. My father holds my hand, and I pretend to be strong so he'll be proud of me. He gives me $20 and puts me on the train. He smiles and kisses me, but his eyes tell me he's sad. I run to a window, see it so I can wave goodbye as the train slowly pulls away. I watch from my window as children are lined up at another train station where more children are being picked up. The very young children are lifted onto the train. They find seats in silence and look out their windows as their parents, as they wave goodbye. We watched as rivers of tears flow down mothers' faces. I try not to cry as the other children bang on the windows trying to get out. My mother told me not to cry and to be brave and strong. For the first time, I feel empty, abandoned, and everything closes in. And I close my eyes to try and make it go away. But the train keeps on moving, farther and farther away from what I knew and learned to trust, and only sadness surrounds me. That train always taking me away, making me let go of my father's hand to show him that I have to be brave to go learn to be a white man. Ouch, my skin is burning from this white liquid being poured on my body. I do not make a noise, as my mom told me not to cry and to be strong like my brother. I sit on a chair, and my hair is trying to hang on to my scalp. It moves in slow motion as it falls from my heart, the strands of Mother Earth torn from my soul. My braids, like thick midnight color rope, lay across the cold cement floor. I didn't know how to say in Windows Citizen. I have to pee in English. All the other kids are staring straight ahead. They've all been here before. Mister throws me across the desk and pulls down my wet panties. No, not my panties. Every day at school I wait, and every night I wish for summer, pulling the fish out of the fish nets. One slips through my fingers. He is free. I say to myself, I can slip away too. I'm as slippery as this fish. Mr. made me stay after class again to wipe the blackboards. It made my hands real dirty, so dirty I wanted to chop them off with my meat cutter because they were his hands now. He loved them. I guess my hands will get old first before the rest of me. Only my mother's hands are allowed to touch me there. Where are you, Mom? I need to cry now. Can I try? I went to Moose Fort Indian Residential School in Moose Factory. And then I was on that train to Mohawk Institute, 1,000 miles away from home. Then I went to Chinook School, Sault Ste. Marie. I was separated by my brothers and sisters, from my brothers and sisters. My brother Ben would protect me, but I didn't know where he was. I really don't want to go into detail about the mental, emotional, physical, and sexual abuse that I experienced during the 8 years I was in those schools. I was just a child, and I knew no boundaries. I said to myself, is this how a rabbit feels when he is caught in a snare? The more you resist, the tighter the wire tugs your throat. Now, all of a sudden, I have a voice. The worst thing from the moment you sit up in your bunk in the mornings, though the warmth of the sun is shining in your face, is getting up and walking. So terrified that you will make a mistake. They told us if we ran away, our parents would die. My sister Linda ran away. I saw her cross the first line of fence. She went down the lane and crossed the second line, the devil's line, the curse on the other side. She touched it. All the girls were hanging out the windows yelling, "Go, Linda, go," pushing her. She moved slowly, that curse hanging over her head. Many children ran away. Some made it home, but most of them froze in the bushes, railroad tracks, and in the rivers and lakes. Children frozen for months until the sun warms and melts away the cold to give new life to Mother Earth and its living creation. Yet some were never found. I call them shadow people. They have not found their way, stuck between here and the spirit world. Soon they will be released when we address the truth and reconciliation in unity. But these spirits will continue to roam until the truth and the history is recognized by this nation for the mistreatment of residential school children. White privilege is not what I wanted or even knew it existed. It was forced upon me in many ways. There wasn't even an option for me, and probably there are some white people that do not feel privileged either. The white race that is poor and white women have privileges that are less than the white male. Unless they come to a place of understanding about equality, these privileges will continue to be withheld from people of color. Pouring Javex on my body to try and change the color of my skin to the finest pearled white beauty didn't help either. The government wanted to make me white, but they couldn't change the color of my skin. And so I began my journey of self-destruction, because this is not white privilege. We all get in our own way in our journeys. I did it repeatedly by drinking and doing drugs, and I didn't know how to stop it. I was broken. I sabotaged my own existence. I was screaming inside, and I only knew drugs and alcohol could make it go away. I didn't fit in anywhere. My community didn't want me, as they said that I thought I was too good for them because I was educated. The white community didn't want me either because I was an Indian, a dirty, stupid, lazy, drunken whore, and that I wouldn't account for anything. I put up many obstacles in my path. I could not cope with the problems I faced each day. I hung out with a crowd that didn't judge me. It was my choice to allow drugs and alcohol to drag me down. It was my choice. The day never comes when you wait for it. The sun only shines when it wants to. When I wait for tomorrow to come, I don't know where I am. I don't know where my blood runs through. I don't know whether my toes touch the ground, and my fingers feel like they're tied to the ceiling. And every time I wait to be freed, more strings go up to freeze me, like the way Virgin Mary is, but without a smile. I'm waiting for the next day so I can be free from today. But the more I wait for tomorrow, the longer I wait, the more in jail I feel. I don't want to be me. I didn't want to be Shirley Chichu. Who are you? There was a time when nobody drank. It was like it just happened one day. Everyone was drinking and they were beating each other up. Women getting blamed for the children being taken away. My bottle was my friend. You protect me like I'm your baby. You're always here when I need you. They said that guy was beating her up. That's why I went after him with a 2x4, because he was beating up my aunt. I don't like it when my dad does it. I thought only Indians lived that way, and I was one of them. Hey, Claude, I saw the cops at your house. They were looking for you. They questioned me and searched me and handcuffed me, and then after they were finished, they said, I've never had an Indian before. How do you move on from this? The bottle of whiskey was always there. How many times does my heart get torn in half? When your heart breaks in half, now you become a puppet. You have no control of your own being. I know so many from school that could not handle the pain. I know so many who took their lives as the parents that were supposed to help and protect them had broken wings and could not surround their children with hugs when they needed it. They were damaged too by the residential school system. This is not white privilege. I was told I almost killed a guy last night with a 2x4 and nails sticking out, a 4-inch nail. That guy could have been my dad. What kind of a person am I? Who am I? They stopped me before I hit my uncle with that board. I tried to kill myself after that. I couldn't get the image of my dad dead from my own hands. He used to beat my mom, and that person could have been him. I was so messed up. I could have killed my own dad. Dad I could not live with, and I knew that much. This turned my life around, and I began a spiritual journey all on my own. I quit drinking and doing drugs cold turkey. I was so ashamed of my family, my friends, my community, myself. Why isn't anyone listening to these cries of help? I chose a path, and I was determined to do it my way. My grandfather once told me, forget it, but never forget about it. Surely, do not let anyone choose your path of light. You have to let go of the old self. He said the self is not something already made. It is through your choice of actions that you create your best self. He taught me that no matter what the past or your current condition is, there are ways to control what you will become in life, the way you think and the images that you see, and also the actions you take. I have to turn my life around. That is the choice I made to myself. I must embrace the weight that I carry of the past and stop being a victim of it. I am not saying to forget, but to let go and move forward. I started to reflect on the teaching that I received from my parents, my grandparents before residential school. I started writing. Every day I wrote, but nothing. And then I started writing stories. I heard on the trap line from my parents and my parents. I picked up my guitar and started singing again. I wrote songs about experiences and began singing to audiences. I started to see that my life was changing. Many of us have been raised in poverty, have experienced hardship, and lived in dysfunctional communities. It soon came to me that we are not the only culture that is trapped in this pattern of many failures, but others as well. I have witnessed mental, emotional, physical, and toxic behavior in my community, and I include myself as I lived in this kind of environment for years. I have seen so many people sabotaging their lives and becoming victims over and over again. Young people walking around like those shadow people, so lost. I will never be white privileged. All these young people will not be white privileged. How can I help? I will not be victim anymore. We cannot wait for the next generation to make a difference. We are responsible, and we have the opportunity to make change. We cannot make change if we wish to be trapped in a cocoon. We feel safe in it. No one can unwind you from this cocoon. You have to consume responsibility for your own life, face your fears, and create a desire to break free and take charge of your own journey. Many people throughout their lives have often had regret. They live day to day, disappointment to disappointment, failure to failure. I once walked that same road, so I am not here to judge. I have watched our people over many years investing in our education. I wanted to be part of that journey, so I studied and experienced another method of teaching using the arts. I believe people can reinvent themselves instead of settling on a familiar road they have been traveling that makes them depressed and blaming others for undermining their own self-worth. I say you cannot live in a world saying, I won't make a difference anyway, because whoever touches your life will follow, your children will follow, because that is all they know. When you settle for second best in everything you do have and have people in your life, the people in your life will settle for even less. One of the things that I always dreamt was, on the trap line, my father got sick. He had this growth on the back of his neck. He was in so much pain. We waited for the plane to come, but it didn't come. My mother told us she was going to cut it out. My mother boiled the water and burnt the needles and sat my father down on a stump. She took out her scissors and cut him open. My father sat there with no expression on his face, just silent tears running down. She took out this thing that looked like a big spider, the size of a man's hand, or at least my father's hand. She put it in a jar and sewed his neck, and she put oatmeal on it to heal the wound. When she was finished, he passed out for about 4 days. From that day forward, I wanted to be like my mother, be a doctor and heal people. Indian Affairs would not sponsor me. They wanted me to be a secretary. I wanted to be like my mom, delivering babies, operations, and she always knew what to do when someone got sick. This is not white privilege. So I decided that I couldn't be what I wanted to be, but that will not stop me. I began a journey as an artist, and then came the surprise. I married an artist, the late Blake DeBosky, and we had a beautiful surprise, the birth of our son. Then came the honorary doctorate, Aboriginal Achievement Award, nominated for Ontario Lieutenant Governor, Queen Diamond Jubilee Award, and Premier's Award for Excellence in the Arts, Molson Prize. I also received many awards for the films that I made. One of the biggest problems with success in our communities is that people in our communities conspire to stop you from doing the thing that you do because you are successful. We have to start recognizing when people in our communities are successful and start supporting these people. Our young people would see this sincere gesture and empowers them to work harder towards success. But when we put our people down, our young people do not want to be in that situation, so they withdraw. We need to include them in adopting resolutions to change. Serving the youth has always been my passion, so I began working with them. In 1983, when I realized that our young people had no resources, and I started up West Bay Children's Theatre that turned into a well-renowned theatre called the Bajamujik Theatre Group. This group is now known internationally. For years, I've asked myself as a mother and as a woman in my community, how many more years are we going to leave the children and the youth in the hands of unemployment? How many more people will have to fall into the trap that steals and butchers lives, dreams, and hopes of our next generation to come? We must learn to defeat the system and fix the problem now, and we must do it together. The third world country is right here in our backyards. I wasn't going to I wasn't going to stand by and watch our young people roaming around like those shadow people, lost and have no place to go. I had to do something. Then I began building the foundation for a film school after making my first feature film in my community, and I had 27 youth work on my film. When it was done, they asked me so many times, when are you going to make your next film? So I started Wingash Film Institute on Manitoulin Island. We struggle every month, and it's a real challenge. We are understaffed, but our commitment to the youth is stronger. We have some angels such as Juliana Sprott Foundation, the late Linda McKay, Barry and Laurie Green, and Family Trust, and Rankin Construction, to name a few. They have kept our doors open, and thank you for awakening this dream of 80% of our graduates have found a new life, and they are either working in the film industry or started up their own businesses, and some have gone back to school. I come from a background when we spoke, our voices were unheard. Today, we still feel marginalized, excluded, and devalued. Healing is the first step on the road to empowerment. The arts, in many ways, have helped me heal, and also for many others. But race is still an issue that is in this place. This country should not ignore anymore. I have heard people say there is no racism. We have not overcome or worked through this issue today. And if we walk away and continue to ignore it, we will never come together and solve challenges like poverty, poor health, low standard education, no clean water. This is not white privilege. I have 7 friends, 7 women sitting in a circle, all different in color, the beauties of the sister moon. My sisters from a different time protecting me so I can walk into the light and tell my story with no fear, with no sadness, no judgment, leaving behind my old self-betrayer that has trapped me in silence in a box of cockroaches, crawling all over me, sexually abusing me against my will, telling me they loved me. I felt the fear making my crotch ache. I could not say no, no, no. I want to talk to me now, down to where my gut is aching to answer me. I must take my position in the sisterhood because I am a woman. One sister must not let down another. I would like to share a story. I was at a conference in Winnipeg a couple of years ago, and on the first day, all I heard all day, residential school survivors. I began to notice that I was falling back into the trap of feeling like a victim and started even feeling sorry for myself. I was a mess all night from that experience. And then the next morning, I fell back into a very dark place. Rather than leave the event with this feeling and knowing that there were so many of us feeling the same way, I approached the microphone. In that moment, I knew I wasn't a survivor, but a warrior. I said, we have not survived. We live with this every day of our lives, and in some cases, we thrive. But we fight with it because some things always trigger what we have been put through as a child. We should be identified as residential school warriors. Calling us warriors, you empower us. You empower all our children. You empower communities across the country. When we hear those are the residential school survivors, we'll compensate them. This keeps us quiet, and we feel it's our fault our communities are so dysfunctional. I tell you this because in some way in our own lives, we are all warriors, strong and empowered to share our opinions, dreams, and hopes for the education of our young people and our communities. I am not white, and I never will be. We must work together to make change and develop and implement solutions and create opportunities for everyone equally across this country. But if we continue to ignore change, then it's a privilege. And if we all believe in change, then change will happen. Let's keep this momentum going together. There's a lot of work to be done. In 1982, I was 30 years old when the government recognized Indigenous people's rights and went to Constitution. 2008, Truth and Reconciliation Commission is formed. In 2015, Truth and Reconciliation calls for action. 94 actions is released. In 2024, only 12 have been completed. They say September 30th, Orange Shirt Day, Truth and Reconciliation Day. Why is it only one day? I was 72 years old, and I live this every day. I don't need an orange shirt to tell me what I've been through. But I'm very happy to see all these orange shirts out here today. Miigwech. I would like to leave you with a quote from Black Elk. A man who has a vision is not able to use the power of it until after he has performed the vision on earth for the people to see. I have not been on this journey by myself. I have a son who is my right-handed man in all the work that I do. And then on the left side, I have my mentors, Phyllis Ellis, Patricia Scarlett, and my dear friend, Christine Wiskichan. I would name more, but I'd be here all day. Miigwech, thank you.
I'm just waiting for my heart to slow down. It was very powerful. Thank you, Shirley, for being with us here today, for sharing such powerful and moving words that will continue, I'm sure, to really resonate with us as we think about the significance of this day, the history, and our continued efforts towards reconciliation. As we take a moment to contemplate, we also have some time for questions from audience members, if that's okay. In the Great Hall, those who are here in the Great Hall today, We do have individuals with mics who are able to bring a microphone to you if there's a question that comes to mind. If so, please do indicate to our staff, and we'll try to get to as many questions as possible. So take a moment. Is there someone with a mic? Oh, here we have Tom. Just wanted to double check that. Maybe I'll ask a question since I have a mic. Just thinking about the impact you've had, and again, you've shared your story with us today, part of that, and your work you've done through film, and the message you try to convey through that work, and now the role you have within the university environment, where we see so many of the next generation across our campus. As you think about that, the work you've done and the continued impact you have now is, and you shared some of that with us today, what impression do you hope to leave with the next generation in terms of thinking about the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation and how we carry that within our own lives? If that's okay, I hope that wasn't too layered.
Well, to leave something for the next generation, we have to implement those calls of action. One of the actions is that the government would create or give funding to nonprofit organizations that work with young people, Indigenous youth. That's not happening. I've been in this business for so long, and I still struggle trying to get funding from them so that I can build a new school, build a residence for these students to come from all over the country. I get applications from Africa. I get applications from New Mexico. These people want to come to the school. And if universities like this Toronto University, University of Toronto, supposed to be a leading university, partner with us. Help us make these things happen. That's what we could leave to our next generation.
Thank you. Thank you for that, and I agree. We have this opportunity to empower. I know we have folks here across our 3 campuses within community, and as educators, and as an educator myself, that is something certainly I will continue to carry forward with me today. So thank you again for your message. So, before I invite Chancellor Hall to close today's proceedings, I'd like to remind our guests here today that a community gathering will immediately follow this event at Zeebing, located just outside the building, in front of Hart House, and this is hosted by First Nations House, so thank you to the First Nations House team. I'd like to acknowledge the planning committee members who have worked to bring today's commemoration to our community, as well as thank today's volunteers who have graciously donated their time today. Can we give them a big applause? And a thank you to the Hart House team for helping to put today's event together. With that, I will introduce our final speaker today, Chancellor Wesley J. Hall. Chancellor Hall began his term as the 35th Chancellor at the University of Toronto on July 1st, 2024. He is the chairman and founder of We Shall Investments and is a recipient of 6 honorary doctorates, including from the University of Toronto, for his accomplishments as an entrepreneur and innovator, and for his leadership as a prominent anti-racism advocate. Chancellor.
David, thank you very much, and surely what an honor to be in your presence. You know, stories, without us telling our stories, change will never happen. And as heartbreaking as it is to tell our stories, we must tell them, and we must keep telling them. And the beauty of the Indigenous community is that that's how they pass things on to the next generation, not by writing them down, but by telling stories. And we need to learn a thing or two from that, so thank you for that. You know, when we think about the orange shirt that we're wearing today, it's because of those stories. It's because of the story of Phyllis Webstad, of going to the store with her father and her mother to buy this beautiful orange shirt, to wear it to school, the residential school, only to find out that she couldn't wear this beautiful orange shirt because there's a uniform that she had to wear. And she tells her story. And just like Shirley's story, when we tell those stories, it changes a city, it changes a country, it changes the world. So why are we here today? Well, we're here today, first of all, to acknowledge the truth, of the residential school, and to honor the legacy of the residential school warriors. Survivors are victims. Warriors are not. And that's why it's so appropriate when Shirley said the name should be changed to warriors, because you're not victim and you're living it every single day. History, what does it mean? It means to study the past, especially as it relates to human affairs. Studying the past. Phyllis Webstad said that if we forget, we're bound to repeat it. So if these stories are not told on a regular basis, we will forget the past. And those traumatic experiences that Shirley talked about today is bound to be repeated. So even though there are people who feel that we should stop talking about the traumas that was inflicted on generations of Indigenous people, African Canadians, that we can't stop talking about them because we are bound to ensure that the past is not repeated. So I'd like to thank everyone that participated in this event today. I'd like to also appreciate those who had the courage to actually invite Shirley here today. Shirley, like you, I never thought in my wildest dream that I'd be standing here as chancellor of this institution. And that proves that even though progress is not swift, it's happening. And for that, I appreciate the university. I would also like to thank those in the university community who have been doing this work for years and continue to do so. Members of U of T's Truth and Reclamation Steering Committee, Indigenous elders and knowledge keepers, colleges in the Office of the Indigenous Initiatives, and Indigenous members of our community, students, staff, faculty, and members alike. I want to thank you all for your partnership. I want to thank you all for continuing to doing the hard work that you're doing today to change lives and also to change the world. I am optimistic standing here today as your chancellor, that the University of Toronto community will continue to embrace opportunities for mutual engagement, understanding, and two-way dialogue. This brings this gathering to a close. Thank you very much for coming, and I hope you would go to Shirley after this and ask her your questions privately if you didn't want to do it so publicly. Well, thank you for coming, and have a good day.